Yinlin has been out in Wedding Way for a while now, and after doing a tons of research on a lot of Chinese side of stuff, I think I've came to a conclusion of where Yinlin stands, how to properly play her, and stuff like that. So in today's video, we're gonna be breaking down her kit, her combo, how to play her, what is her best team, and most importantly, is this character actually strong? This is the complete Yinlin breakdown. Subscribe to the channel, let's get started. Yinlin basic attack sequence come in a string of 4. Every single time you hit the enemy, it will charge up your forte circuit. In my experience, the first one is quite fast, so it's useful for parrying, but the second and the third and the fourth hit is quite slow in long animation, so it's not suitable for parrying. Holding Yinlin basic attack button will do a heavy attack, which is this spinning circle thing. Now this attack is actually very useful because it charges up your forte circuit extremely quick. Yinlin basic attack is capable of applying Sinner's Mark onto the enemy, and when your forte circuit is full by doing a charge attack, you're able to sit in a chair and convert the Sinner's Mark into Punisher Mark. When you're hitting an enemy with a Punisher Mark, even on a different characters, Yinlin will perform like Link Strike attack, and this is where majority of her damage come in. Keep in mind that these are considered to be skill damage. Remember that your forte is only responsible for converting Sinner's Mark into Punishment Mark. That means if an enemy wasn't previously hit, doing a forte on them will have no effect. Another thing to understand is that the punishment attack will trigger on all the enemy that are marked, even though you only hit one of them, making Yinlin an absolute AoE monster. Note that this attack animation has very long, so it's more recommended to swap cancel out of it. Yinlin's skill come in a quick 2-part. The first click and then a second click where it explodes. After you cast the first part of the skill, Yinlin enter executioner mode. Her next 4 basic attack is going to empower and additionally struck the enemy with lightning. Please note that the second part of your skills disappear if you swap off Yinlin. If you're playing Yinlin normally, your combo is going to be E1, E2, and then followed by 4 attack. This is a very basic combo, and I'll show you a much better combo later. One of the most important things to understand about her mark is that based on the amount of enemy you hit, you can actually recharge Concerto energy much faster. So if you're ever fighting a large group, just doing basic attack to shorten your combo can be very useful. You can swap cancel off the second part of the Yinlin skill attack, but be very careful to not cancel it before it lands. Yinlin's second E come in 2 animation. The first part where she flip over and hit it, and then the actual explosion. If you swap cancel out the first part, the second explosion will not happen. But interestingly, you're actually able to do something else instead, called the echo cancel. For Yinlin specifically, you can actually cast your echo as soon as the hit land, and it will not cancel off the explosion. Finally, Yinlin ult does very good AoE damage, but the coolest part about this ult is the animation are really hot. A very quick combo you can do is follow your first E immediately with your ult, and follow it with your E2. Hitting the first part of the skill increase your crit rate by 15 seconds, while hitting the second part of the skill increase your attack by 10 seconds. But note that these 2 buffs are extremely short. So personally, I like to follow it with my ult immediately so I can take advantage of the buff on my highest damage skills. Yinlin Outro is one of the biggest buffs in this game. It provides your next character with 20% electro damage amplified, as well as a 25% resonance liberation damage amplified. And while this is really good for electro characters, there's currently no good electro character to take advantage of this buff. Keep in mind that this buff will disappear if you swap off your next characters. So if you try to do swap cancel on Coucharo, this buff will disappear, which makes the Yinlin Coucharo pairing not necessarily the greatest. With that being said, one of the smoothest Yinlin combo is to do a intro followed by E1 immediately into E2 into an echo cancel into your ult and holding your charge attack here, and finally forte. If you don't have your ults ready, then I follow a similar pattern, except I follow it with a field attack at the very end to get my Concerto up. Note that this will require you to actually hit your forte on Yinlin, so you might be a little more vulnerable in this case. For echoes, the go-to choice is going to be the Fluids actually. The biggest benefit of this echo is that it deploys extremely quick and has very short animation. And it's currently one of the best electro echo right now. So I highly recommend to go for this echo instead of any other echo in the game. While the boss level 4 echo could be very tempting because they provide you with a electro damage buff, the problem is that both of these boss 4-cost echo have extremely long animation and will very easily cut into your rotation. So I highly recommend you go for the 3-cost Fluid instead. Weapon choice, obviously we have her signature weapon Strength Master that you can get alongside with the Yinlin banner, but other options that are really good including the other 5-star weapon Cosmic Rippers or the Battle Pass weapon Augment. And if you don't, then using the free-to-play weapon kind of from the Jinzu Keeper is a really good choice. For your sets, generally speaking, going for the War Thunder 5-piece set is going to be a best bet. It's not really worth it to go for the other set like Moonlit set, even though it can empower your main DPS, just because Yinlin damage is actually a pretty good chunk. So therefore, trying to improve Yinlin damage as much as possible will generally speaking yield the best results for your overall team damage. For your main side, we run the typical setup of putting crit on your forecast, prioritizing crit rate if you don't have a crit weapon, otherwise prioritizing crit damage if you do have a crit weapon. For your free cost, I recommend to run 1 ER if you don't have it, otherwise electro damage is better than attack percent. And finally for your 1 cost, as usual, attack percent. Pushing your Yinlin to about 30 to 40% energy recharge is extremely important to ensure that she has ults every rotation. Her ult is extremely important because it is capable of applying your Sinus Mark onto a large amount of enemy at once and also smooth around your rotation. Substat wise, starting off with the most important, which is ER until you have enough. Energy regen is just really important, followed by your typical double crit, followed by attack percent, followed by skill damage, because again, her punishment mark are considered to be skill damage, finally followed by liberation damage. Interestingly enough, there has recently been a lot of Chinese discussion on the Moonlit set being better on Yinlin, but it requires you to have basically perfect substat on top of perfect rotation. Here's a quick showcase from a Chinese bilibili video that I personally couldn't perform because this extreme rotation requires a lot of precise swapping and a precise animation cancelling. But a lot of Chinese conclusions have come to the same idea of that when playing under extreme optimal rotation, the Moonlit set is actually going to be better on Yinlin, especially if you have her signature weapon. The biggest benefit of a Moonlit set though, however, is that you can share this on almost every single team. Majority of the team in Wedding Wave contain at least one Moonlit set holder, except for your free cost, you can share pretty much every other piece. Or in fact, if you run a attack percent main set on your free cost, you can share the entire set across every single team in your Moonlit set. So I highly recommend you to keep out for an eye for future development on the Moonlit discussion. And for now, highly recommend to start keeping around your crit pieces on your Moonlit, your attack pieces on your Moonlit and stuff like that, because there is a very high chance in the futures when we do finalize the rotation that Yinlin is actually better off running Moonlit set. Although again, this requires some extreme optimized gameplay, so highly recommend this going for the Thunder set for now, but keep an eye out. Again, subscribe for more future Yinlin development. With that being said, when it comes down to team comp, you have your very obvious choice of Electro team, running either Yanwu or Kaocharo as your main Electro DPS. Personally, I have been really enjoying the Yanwu Electro team carry just because it is really smooth to play. It plays like a typical traditional team where you have a healer or support like Marina, followed by your first sub DPS, in this case Yinlin, and then followed by your main DPS, which is Yanwu. And you basically just do your basic rotation I showed you before, and you swap to Yanwu and you attack on him. Very straightforward to play. But keep in mind, you don't have to use a Electro main DPS with her. Using something like a Havoc main characters as your main DPS is actually a really good choice, since Havoc main characters benefit from the ult liberation damage bonus that provided by Yinlin a lot. A team like this is a lot more flexible since Havoc main character is more like a quick swappy character who doesn't demand as much field time compared to the typical Electro character like Yanwu or Kaocharo. Yinlin is actually rather universal to slot into most teams, even though she provides a Electro buff. That is just because she rotates relatively quick while being able to do damage in the background, making her a very good character to slot into most teams, but especially in teams that have short rotation so that you can keep swapping back and forth. And this is the most obvious when it comes down to doing a pairing like Yinlin Encore. Yinlin Encore is one of the extensive quick swap team available in the game right now. The main idea of this team is to utilize each of Yinlin's and Encore long animation to swap cancel out. When you're doing a charge attack of Encore, you swap to Yinlin, and then when you cast your E on Yinlin that have a long animation, you swap back to Encore and likewise. This team is a little intense to play, it's a little less recommended for inexperienced player, but can definitely be a top contender if you have the fingers to play this team, I guess. The main principle of this team is to swap cancel out of everything, including like her basic attack and stuff like that, just because they have like a split second worth of animation, and between Yinlin and Encore, you rapidly swap between these two teams. Good thing is that you can kind of test out how this team is being played in the current event right now, and it comes down to the third Scorching Rift. You can click on challenge, and then you can click Yinlin and Encore as your characters. But this team requires some extensive swapping back and forth. It's one of the most fun teams, but also very, very intensive to play. Personally, I don't really recommend it for inexperienced player, but it could be very, very fun. Not gonna go detail into specific of the swap cancel playstyle since it requires some extreme notation and will be very different per team. But the most important thing I want to talk about is that when it comes down to a game like Wedding Wave, I think picking the characters with the playstyle that is suitable for you is much more important than trying to go for the strongest character in this game. Because as you can see, sometimes the stronger rotation could be extremely intensive and not suitable for everyone. I think the good news here is that Yinlin is actually pretty good at doing pretty much everything. From your typical playstyles where you do a bunch of combo on Yinlin, do a rotation, and then swap to your main DPS and do a bunch of stuff, or even the extreme playstyle between Yinlin and Encore where you swap back and forth very intensively. And while I think Yinlin is an incredibly strong character, doing very good electro damage in the background and even better AoE damage on top of that, I think by far means she's not a must pull. Her best team right now doesn't contain actually an electro team, which is either using Yanwu and Kaucharo as your main DPS. While she slot into non-electro team like having main characters or Encore, I think one of the biggest reasons you have to consider of why she is slotting in those teams is because we don't have any other option right now. While I think Yinlin has the potential to be a very, very good electro sub DPS for almost any electro team in the future, we don't really know that for sure. And until we get a proper electro main DPS that is actually suitable for Yinlin, it is hard for me to recommend that she is an absolute must pull. But I will say that she is very, very, very strong for sure. We have a lot more characters coming into the horizon for Wedding Wave, and I think it is very easy for those characters to be just as strong. And the main problem is that we just don't really have a lot of strong character in the game right now, so it might look like Yinlin is a lot better than the other characters, but that could be very untrue in the span of like 2 months. I think Yinlin is a really strong character, but again, just not a must. So my overall verdict is actually going to put her into the A tier category, and it's highly recommended to pull for if you really like Yinlin, or if you currently main the electro main DPS in the game like Yanwu or Kaucharo. And while there are other strong team options like Yinlin and Encore, I personally don't really recommend pulling for Yinlin just so you can play this team, because I think there are easily going to be better options in the near future. If that being said, I think Yinlin is definitely a very, very strong sub DPS, just because especially with the new combo, it eliminates her clunkiness problem a lot, and overall Yinlin actually play very smoothly for being how strong she is. So yeah, overall highly recommended, just not a must pull, because I think it's too early to tell when we don't have a proper electro main DPS. I think Yinlin would be one of the best electro support when we do get one, but for now, she is one of the hottest women in the game.